We're going to explore the critical link between our diets and, I guess, overall well being. Green Warriors, have you ever wondered if the food you eat can truly impact your health from preventing disease to even reversing it? Well, Cyd is here to discuss some common misconceptions and in her presentation on the disconnects between diet and health.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's
So
true.
we're going to go ahead, Cyd.
Yeah. Well, I've got six big disconnects to share with you today, which we'll talk about each one as we go along, if that's okay with you, Amy, because I'm sure you have some great insights on this as well.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. And I'm going to say that Cyd has provided us with some true or false questions, and we're going to be talking about those along the way.
Mhm.
So, whenever you are you ready to start,
Sure. Yep.
Cyd? Okay, hang on a second. Let's just, here we go. So, we'll start with your presentation.
Okay. So today, have you ever wondered, since we're talking about the big disconnects, how many things we do in the interest of prevention? Let me see if I can get my screen going. Here we go. So we do a lot of things in the interest of prevention. For example, we wear seat belts, right, to prevent injury, and we install security alarms to prevent burglaries, and we have our cars tuned up to prevent breakdowns. We wear sunscreen, right, to prevent sunburn, and we even purchase certain toothpastes to prevent tooth decay. And we put flea oil on our pets sometimes if we want to prevent fleas. We back up our computers, to prevent losing our data. All sorts of things going on. But where we are sadly lacking in this big area of prevention that we always think about, we don't think about the area of prevention when it comes to what we're eating every day. Oftentimes, we're not even thinking about the foods that we eat and if they could be contributing to some danger toward us. So, we might be willing to spend a lot of money on supplements because we're led to believe that they prevent disease. But we often give very little thought to the role nutrition truly plays in the area of prevention, halting, and the reversal of disease. So here's what I call a few of the big disconnects when it comes to nutrition and health. So this might be a good time for a true and false question, Amy.
Okay, let's bring this up with our true or false question.
It's time for True or False on Be Green with Amy Live. Answer true or false to Amy's questions in the comments below, and Amy will ask our guest for the expert answer.
Okay, Green Warriors, here's the first question. True or false? The majority of Americans understand that food is the most likely cause of their ailments. True or false? Put your answers in the comments. Cyd, what is the answer?
The answer is definitely false. The majority of Americans are not understanding that food is the likely cause of their ailments, which brings us to big disconnect number one, not understanding the cause and effect of food. So we can all relate to the immediate pain that results from touching a hot stove or stepping on a sliver, right? It's quite easy in those cases to identify the current cause of our pain is either the red hot burner on the stove or the damaged wood floor. And my job would sure be a lot easier, excuse me, if we had that same identifier when it comes to the 3 to 5 pounds of food that we ingest every day. So when it comes to food intake, it seems that the more time that elapses between our food intake and the resulting negative effect, the more difficult it is to make that connection between the two, right? That's why we have a big disconnect there. And the more unlikely we are to make any changes to our behavior. Now, I should point out that there are a certain few health conditions for which people can easily identify the source of their pain, such as people that have acid reflux or food allergies or migraines or hangovers. All of that may be very well traceable to what they've recently consumed. But for the most part, so little awareness exists between the consumption of bad foods and the resulting injury that people are not connecting the dots. So the big disconnect between the wrong food choices and the resulting ailments might be greatly eliminated. For example, if people had chest pain right after they were eating a bacon cheeseburger and fries, or if our joints ached after we ate a bunch of glazed donuts, or if we could feel our blood pressure spike even after we had some fried chicken. But that's not how it happens. The ailments build up slowly. But if they didn't, we might be able to connect the dots more easily and then recognize the true health damage caused by the standard of American diet. So before we embarked on our plant-based journey, my husband would order a fried fish dinner and a milkshake at a popular fast food chain. This was, many, many years ago. And then shortly thereafter, he'd always get this like mucusy cough, which would last about an hour. And we didn't think anything about it then. But after we learned about plant-based eating and we learned about nutrition, it's only then that we learned about the cause and effects of the food, which was that dairy milkshake, the irritants of dairy and fat that was making him get all mucusy like that. So that's big disconnect. Any number one. Any comments there, Amy, that you would like to notate from based on what you see?
Well, first of all, it made me think about a post that I recently put on my Facebook page. And it was something that because I'm also in a gardening group, and they had posted a picture of a plant, and it was a graphic, and it showed this plant with different colored leaves. Some of them were yellow, and some of them were green, some of them were wilted, and it had all these arrows pointing to the different leaves and saying, this means it needs more nitrogen. This means it's getting too much of and it went to all. And so on my post, I said, we don't have leaves on us to show what it is that we're lacking or what is that is harming us.
Mhm.
So and so it reminded me of that when you were talking about how if you drank something or ate something that you would immediately following feel something, and we don't. And you're right. And even, I mean, you talk about your husband. My husband Rick, he just discovered that we were eating farro, and I don't eat as much of it as he does because he enjoys it. And then for a while we stopped eating it, and then when he ate it, he noticed that his knuckles were like feeling inflamed and were aching him. And he kept trying it and then not having it, and every time he had it, within a day or two, he would feel those joints aching him. And he finally put the connection, because there was a disconnect, he put the connection there, and he realized that the farrow was doing it. Of course, before we went on this lifestyle, there was a lot of things that we may not have. And I know that for me, I used to have a lot of sinus infections, and Rick used to have a lot of migraines. We don't get those anymore. And there's a lot of other health issues that we had that we're not experiencing. But there was a disconnect, absolutely.
Mm. Interesting. Did you say farro, the
Yeah.
grain? Oh, really? Okay. So
Isn't
for
that interesting?
yeah.
And unfortunately, we don't know if it's the actual grain or if it's the way they genetically modified it, or the
Mm.
different chemicals. Because even when you get organic, there's still going to be certain kinds of uh, pesticides or herbicides used on these things, because they're still allowed. They're just not allowed as much. So who knows what it that could have been it too.
Interesting. Very interesting indeed how we now can make the connection because we're aware, but most people are not, which is why it's great that we have shows like Be Green with Amy where we can learn about nutrition and other things. All right, should we move on to
Yes.
big disconnect number 2, which is I'm on meds, so I no longer have a problem. Taking meds for a chronic condition and believing that the problem no longer exists ranks as another really big disconnect that I've witnessed over the years. And some of my clients consider themselves to be in excellent health despite the need for several daily medications, right? They think the medication has solved the problem, basically. And they're not alone. Many people taking meds for preventable conditions, they develop this false sense of security because their biomarkers are now back in range. Their blood markers are within range and they might be feeling a little better, but they're not making any meaningful lifestyle change because they are reasoning that their health issues have been solved and their doctors aren't telling them otherwise. And so despite the symptom relief and the better blood work, that chronic condition, along with its root cause, still exists, and it's going to continue to exist until the dietary environment that we switch to, which will heal or reverse that condition, is provided. So I see this all the time where people, are taking meds and thinking they're in excellent health, even though they need a medication to keep themselves in good health. In their view, they're still in good health. Do you understand what I'm saying, Amy, right? Have you seen this
I
in your
do.
practice?
Yeah, actually, a client of mine, I'm trying to get her to remove dairy because of the cheese thing. That's the one thing that she's having difficulty letting go. And
Mhm.
and she's actually lactose intolerant and takes one of those meds before she eats the
Mm,
cheese so that she doesn't experience the noticeable symptoms. And I'm trying to tell her that, just because you take this medication and it prevents some of the symptoms that you notice, think
mhm.
about the other things that are going on that you may not be aware of. So she thinks as long as she takes this medication before dairy, that solves her problem. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not saying there's not a time ever, when we wouldn't need medication for something. I'm not saying that. But with the chronic lifestyle issues, why manage disease when you can most likely get rid of it, right? That's what most Americans are doing, is just managing their disease and not addressing the root cause. So maybe we should have another true false now, since we're on that topic a little bit.
Okay. True or false, our genetics and family history are the biggest factors for our health outcomes. Okay, Green Warriors, what's your guess? And Sid's going to tell us the answer. Okay, Sid, are you ready?
I am. The
Okay,
answer to
right.
that is a big old false too, which brings us to big disconnect number 3. If it runs in my family, it does. This disease runs in my family, so it's out of my control. So that is false, that our genetics are not the biggest factor of our health comes by any means. So, this third big disconnect deals with the misconception that diet and lifestyle don't matter because disease X, whatever it is, diabetes, whatever, runs in my family. And I have heard this expression countless times over the years from people who believe they've been dealt the genetic cards, and they're powerless to prevent disease. They feel like it's totally out of their control. So, for anyone living with the assumption that you have no control over your health because you're pre programmed for some malady, I have good news for you, because disease and disability are far more preventable than you may have ever thought, even if you are genetically predisposed. Because there's a big difference between being born with a gene, that's genetic predisposition, and whether or not that gene will develop into a disease, that's genetic expression. So suppose you're born with a predisposition for colon cancer, for example. Your food choices remain by far the greatest determinant of whether or not you will develop cancer. The non genetic factors like poor diet and poor lifestyle habits account for up to 90% of the cases of our top killers. Some of you might be familiar with Dr. T. Colin Campbell. He's a nutritional biochemist who's been in the business for well over 50 years. He's the author of the China Study and several really good books. He has spent decades in this area of nutrition research. And one article that he authored reveals how the gene responsible for liver cancer, for example, it can be dramatically repressed by consuming less animal protein and thereby delaying or totally preventing the liver cancer. And we also know from research regarding the Alzheimer gene, which is the ApoE4, that's the gene that, is connected heavily to Alzheimer's development. Research shows and convincingly demonstrates that diet trumps genes in the expression of that dreaded disease, with saturated fat intake and midlife cholesterol levels being the biggest factors in the development of dementia. So remember that genetics may load the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. We've talked about that many times. Genes can only establish the potential for disease, but they do not represent a guaranteed diagnosis. And I like how Dr. John McDougall, he points to many studies that confirm that our good genes are turned on by a healthy gut environment, whereas our bad genes are silenced by a healthy gut environment, right? We hear a lot about the gut microbiome and how we want to keep our gut in a good, healthy shape. So that healthy environment that Dr. McDougall refers to equates to a starch-based diet with vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and the avoidance of animal products and oils. Now, certain diseases certainly do tend to run in families. I'm not saying, that they don't, but it's clear that people are giving their genetic makeup way too much credit for their ailments. And in some cases, maybe they could be even using it as an excuse, to avoid making any lifestyle changes. So, the biggest risk factor for disease that typically runs in families is the diet and lifestyle pattern that's passed down from the parents, right? You ever think about that with your own family? Like, what diet and lifestyle habits are your children learning right now? That's the most important thing we should be focused on of what's being passed on, not our genetics, but the habits that they're learning. So the children's health and future well-being are at stake, and even our own, because we can change our genes in real time. Science has shown that, when we adopt a healthy diet, our genes adapt to that, and we can pass those healthier genes on down the line in our family tree. So switching to a whole food plant-based diet is your best defense to prevent, halt, and reverse disease, regardless of your genetic makeup. And with my dire family history of heart disease, stroke, cancer, diabetes, I'm relieved to know that I am not totally predestined to those diseases. I have a lot of control over it, and so do you. Thoughts, Amy, on that one?
Oh, I remember someone that I interviewed said, diseases don't run in your family. No one runs in your family.
Yeah, lifestyle habits matter. And as a child, I, had the standard American upbringing, right? I didn't switch to this way of eating till I was in my mid 30s. So by that time, I had developed high cholesterol. My bones were starting to thin, and I was always sick, because my immune system was shot. Never once did I relate that to my food. So I was in big disconnect number one for many years because I just didn't know any better. All right, shall we press on to big disconnect number 4, which is making small changes and expecting big results. I've seen this happen quite a bit too, where people will settle for small changes only. Uh, but some people will jump all the way in, right? They make a complete overnight conversion because they're convinced by the evidence about whole food plant-based eating, and they're ready to make a total change because they're sick of being sick, basically. And others may fall somewhere in between, that they want to make a series of small changes, but with a firm goal to keep moving forward until they make a complete conversion. So for those people who wade into the waters way more slowly, um, and I want to say here that every small change toward a whole food plant-based diet without added oils is indeed a step in the right direction, right? We never want to dissuade people from making even small changes. But it has to be noted that it's your overall dietary pattern that's going to matter the most. So if you're merely removing or adding a few different foods to the standard American diet, it's very unlikely that you're going to see noticeable health improvement right away, or if at all. For example, if you're adding flaxseed to your dairy-based smoothie, right? Or you're putting some broccoli into your steak stir fry, or you're putting some blueberries onto that high-fat cheesecake, that's not going to produce a lot of change in one's health. You might see a little benefit, but not enough to, make a positive change. And then when people don't see that immediate weight loss or health improvement, they often assume that the diet isn't working and they end up throwing in the towel. So the thinking goes something like this, I'm making all these changes and I haven't lost a pound and my cholesterol is still high. I might as well eat whatever I want. So that's where big disconnect number 4 comes in because they're only making really small changes, but they're expecting big weight loss or big health improvement. So again, committing to making small changes is really commendable. And if that's your personality, then by all means go for it. But those small changes should not be the end goal, right? It should be the catalyst for you to continue making changes until the overall dietary pattern is one that promotes good health. So it's imperative that we continue moving forward with those small changes on a regular basis and often within a specified time frame, right? Give yourself 5 weeks or 6 weeks or whatever, but give yourself a time frame to get where you need to be with the goal to get the dairy and the meat and those high fat desserts and added oils out of your diet altogether. So that's what we have to say there. So even in my book, I did include a transition plan because I know a lot of people don't want to go in, overnight with this, even though those people have the greater success. Studies show that those that dive in have the greater success over those that slowly transition in. But lots of people slowly transition in with great success as well. You just have to keep moving forward. You can't just stay stuck with small changes. Comments, Amy?
Comments, yes. There is a diet that a lot of people who have high blood pressure or if they have heart disease are sometimes their physicians will recommend, and it's called the DASH diet. And it's one of the things that it tells them to do is to lower the amount of sodium that they're supposed to take in. But
Mhm.
even this lower amount of sodium is quite a bit of sodium. So
Mm.
much so that it really isn't going to make much of the difference, especially with their blood pressure, because it's still way too high. And people think that, well, as long as I don't shake salt on my food, then I am definitely lower in sodium. But as we know, in processed food, it's insidious, and there's so much sodium that's added to things that, and even to sodas that don't colas have lots of sodium. So when people think that they're making these small changes, sometimes it's not enough because especially in the standard American diet, the amount of sodium and fat and sugar that's even in our foods that are lower in those amounts, it's still not low enough compared to what we really should be consuming.
Right. So isn't the recommendation 2,300 milligrams per day, but the Heart Association says 1,500? Is that the current
Yeah,
recommendation?
I think it
15?
was about 14 or 1,500 the last
Yeah.
time that I looked. They do change it, but that is still way, way higher, right, Sid, than
Yeah.
what we should be consuming in order to notice any kind of a change.
Yeah. So I've read, and I think Dr. McDougall says this too, is that we get 500 milligrams just naturally occurring in the plant foods that we eat. We're getting about 500 milligrams of sodium a day just from that.
Yes,
Right.
and
So,
people don't
yeah.
realize that the ones that are having consuming a lot of sodium, if they had just a piece of Swiss chard, for example, if they were on a higher sodium or even in a lower sodium diet, they may not even notice that Swiss chard is salty. And we the other day, one of my daughters has been on this, SOS free, and which is sugar, oil, and salt free, and we were having a salad together, and she said, "Tastes like there's salt in this salad." And I said, "That's because of the Swiss chard." And so she was surprised that as you reduce the sodium, now your tongue has neuroadapted and your taste buds have neuroadapted, and you can actually taste the salt that's in lots of these whole food plant-based foods, and you'll get
Mhm.
plenty of it as long as you're eating enough calories.
So are there some salt-free seasonings that you recommend that you guys like to have or,
Yes, actually, one of the seasonings that we like to use is called Benson's Table Tasty,
Mhm.
and that we use that a lot. And then we also recently discovered sumac, and that's not the poison sumac. It's actually a seasoning called sumac, and it has a kind of a citrusy taste to it. And I like that better because it's even less processed than the the Benson's Table Tasty, although there's not too many ingredients in the Benson's Table Tasty. So both of those I think are fabulous. And of course, just using lemon and lime, those are other things that when you put them in your food, because of those taste buds are next to each other, the ones that detect the sodium and the ones that detect the citrusy taste, they're kind of next to each other. So your brain thinks that you're consuming the salt.
Mhm. Yeah, the other day in the store, I was looking at the salt-free seasonings, and McCormick had come out with a couple that I hadn't seen before, and one was called Fiesta or something, and I tried it, and oh man, it's made with mango and pineapple, and it has a bite to it. So if you're looking for a salt-free seasoning that has a little extra bite, that one would be one to try. I'd have to go get it, to remember the actual name. But when I
Oh,
first liked it, I thought it was way too spicy, but now I really like it. It just took me a couple times to eat it, and I thought, this is really tasty. I like Benson's too, though. I like that brand.
yeah. Because when I first began the lifestyle, I was using, I think it was called Mrs. Dash, but
Yeah.
every one of them had pepper in them.
Oh.
And so I said to myself, well, if I just wanted to put pepper on my food, then I want something that tastes like salt, not like pepper. So
Mhm.
so I didn't. But I think it's good that there's so many different things out there because you have to just taste. And what I like to do is not put those seasonings directly in my food when I'm preparing it. If it's something new that I'm not familiar with, I'd rather add it afterwards when I'm tasting it. So I put a little portion on my plate and I sprinkle a little bit of it and see, is this something that I would enjoy? And if not, then at least I can try something else without affecting the entire dish.
That's a great idea. Yeah, always add your salt. Well, it used to be add your salt at the
Yeah.
table, not at the stove, right? That used to be the thing, but could apply to any new spice that you're trying, right? Add it at
Yeah.
the table when you have a plate of it rather than put it in the whole recipe if you're not sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I notice too that when people think they're eating healthier, it's mostly they're eating chicken and fish and low-fat dairy. That's where most Americans are that think they're eating healthy. A lot of people tell me, "Oh, we eat healthy," but upon further review, they're really still eating a diet based on animal products and a lot of high-fat foods, including cheese, which is the highest source of saturated fat in the diet. So transitioning is a good plan if that's your personality. Just got to keep going forward with it. Don't get stuck with, oh, this isn't working, so I'm just going to go back to my old ways. That's just what big disconnect number 4 typically is. Not seeing results because they're not making the right changes or enough changes. And sometimes, Amy, I don't know if you've noticed this, but a lot of the plant foods are very high in fat, and a lot of times people are still consuming too many fatty things like cashews and tahini and avocado. And those things are great, but they need to be used as condiments if you're striving for weight loss, especially, or trying
Yeah,
to reverse the disease.
exactly. Because even if you're not, I'm glad that you added in about the reversing of the disease because people are trying to lower their cholesterol. They're trying to prevent heart disease. And the fat in that you consume, it actually changes the viscosity of your blood and
Hmm.
it does things to your blood cells where what I've learned is that your red blood cells are larger in diameter than your blood vessels that they travel through. And in order to travel through these blood vessels, they actually have to constrict and change their shape in order to kind of bend, kind of like a little Pac-Man going through, but they have to kind of bend over and get through those blood vessels.
Hmm.
And they go through and they're separate from each other because they have negative charges on them, kind of like when you were a kid and you would play with those magnets and they would kind of repel each other. That's what the red blood cells do. Well, when you eat these fatty foods, especially the animal products too, well, that fat kind of sticks on to those red blood cells and it keeps them from getting those negative charges that repel themselves, and then they wind up stacking together. and they call it rouleau formation. It's like a stack of coins. So now you got this stack of red blood cells. Now, how are they supposed to bend and change their shape in order to get through that blood vessel, the capillary? So
Mhm.
it takes them a longer time, and then they start damaging the interior part of that blood vessel. And if you could go on to a molecular level and talk about that, but there's a lot of damage that goes through. So yes, you definitely want to reduce the fat in your diet. So even if you're not
Yeah,
looking to lose weight, it's going to affect other things as well.
exactly. I think we often forget the words low fat. It's low fat, whole food, plant-based diet, right? Keep that in mind. Well, maybe this would be a good time for a true false.
Okay, wonderful. We'll get to the next one. And true or false, health food stores are always the most reliable place to shop for the healthiest products. Okay, Green Warriors, what's your answer? All right, Sid.
That's definitely a big no. That's definitely false. That's another big disconnect that if it's sold at a health food store, it must be healthy, right? We think about that. And when I'm conducting classes or coaching people individually, I've been very surprised by the number of people who hold that view that everything sold at the health food store is actually a healthy product. And this is an unfortunate misconception that stems from a combination of savvy marketing, right? Product marketing and uninformed consumers. So while healthy products can certainly be found at the big chain and small chain health food stores, many items are nothing more than junk, junk food with a fancier label and a higher price. So let's talk about product labels can be so very deceptive, like the words light or natural or organic or gluten free or fat free, no cholesterol. All of these things are assertions or terms that they're trying to use to lure you into purchasing that product. Well, the best way to determine if a product is truly healthy is to read the ingredient list. Products to be aware of would be the fake meats and cheeses, coconut butter, that could be in there, protein energy bars and shake mixes. They're just filled with a lot of questionable ingredients. Even cereals and crackers and corn chips and even dried fruit can be filled with a lot of oil or canned soups, organic margarine spreads, which are typically all oil, and even certain peanut butters can have negative ingredients added. So it's these products that are contain these added oils and other fats, the isolated soy proteins, the dairy proteins such as whey or casein, excessive amounts of sugar and sodium and chemicals and additives and preservatives and either food dyes, which are not only inflammatory, but they're highly, a big allergen for many people too. So watch out for those deceptively packaged vegan foods. And I'm going to talk about this cupcake here in a second. But it could be vegan sodas, desserts, yogurts, snack bars, all of which are loaded with sugar, fat, and salt, which contributes to the bliss point. Have you ever heard about the bliss point?
Yes. I think
That
about these mad scientists in a lab.
yeah. So the bliss point refers to the point where at which sugar, fat, and salt, all of which are highly addictive ingredients, by the way, they're blended to just the right combination and ratio of sweetness and saltiness and richness to make the product irresistible, right? Just the right combination to make our brains light up and get us physically hooked. And that bliss point is what manufacturers are striving to achieve, and they spend big bucks to do it. So what about you, Amy? You know about the bliss point, right? Is that how you understand it?
Oh, yes, yes. I thought about the book, The Salt, Sugar, Fat, How the Food Giants Hooked Us. I really
Yeah.
think that that is a fabulous book if people wanted to learn more about what is going on with these food manufacturers, because they actually do hire scientists, and they decide on how much sugar, salt, and oil to put, or fat to put into something. And like I said earlier, about how if you looked at a soda can, a cola can on the back, and you looked at the ingredients, don't look at the nutrition label, right? Said look at the ingredients. And if you
Mhm.
see you'll see that there's a lot of sodium. Why? Because it'll make you
Mhm.
thirsty. And they have people that they'll put people in MRIs and have them test what their brain does as far as the pleasure centers in their brain. And have they'll have people that they'll have group studies where they'll serve them a cupcake that looks like that, and they'll ask them what they think, and people say, oh, it's too sweet, too much chocolate, or and then they'll give them another version, no, not enough sugar, not enough sweet, or whatever, until they finally find that exact thing. And on the potato chips, they decide where exactly to put the salt so that it hits those we were talking about earlier about the receptors on your tongue that actually that they're in different places, and it puts it on the chip so that when it lands on your tongue, it actually touches those points, and the certain kind of crunch to it, not too mushy, not too hard. They are have a lot of money, and they spend a lot of money because they're going to make a lot of money when they make something that has that bliss point.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, it pays off for them because many Americans are addicted to junk food.
Ah,
So let's take a look at this vegan midnight chocolate cupcake. This could be in a health food store, right? It looks yummy, doesn't it? It's a 4-ounce cupcake, which really is not all that big. I looked that up to see. It's just that cupcake liner is only 3 inches across and 1.5 inches tall. So it's not a very big, gigantic cupcake at all. And let's look at the label though, because uh, one look at the label tells us that this product has 440 calories. It's 40% fat, which is really high. It's got 5 grams of saturated fat, 10 teaspoons of sugar, 290 milligrams of sodium, and only 3 grams of fiber. So if we look at the ingredient list here, we can see the story here, why this product is filled with refined sugars, refined flour, tons of oils, and all of this means that this product is going to go back on the shelf and it's not going to go in our cart, right? So this is an example of something you might see at a health food store or anywhere really for that matter. And we might be tempted to think it's a healthy product because it's labeled vegan when it really is not healthy at all. So instead, let's just choose to make some delicious chocolate cupcakes at home, which is a lot cheaper and easier to do. All right, maybe the last true and false.
okay, we're going to have our last question. Get ready, Green Warriors. True or false? It's possible to determine the underlying reason for our health issues by repeatedly asking why until we get to the root cause. Hmm. Okay, type in your answers. Sid, what do you have to say about that?
That one happens to be true. So it is possible to determine the underlying reasons for our health issues by repeatedly asking why. This brings us to big disconnect number 6, which is failing to recognize or own my own role in my own health matters. And this all ties in with the 5 whys because sometimes people don't take the time to analyze why their health issues are popping up. Many just accept it as a rite of passage into getting older, right? I'm getting older, so now I'm going to get this ailment. And that's not the case at all. So in my book, I talk about the 5 whys technique, which is a problem solving activity that Toyota manufacturing company used to figure out why they would have defects in some of their products. They would ask why until they got to the root cause. And when my husband explained that to me one day, it's like light bulbs went off in my head. Whoa, this would be a great technique to problem solve the underlying reasons that we're all getting sick, right? So this 5 whys technique is used to figure out the nature of a problem as well as the solution. And you can do that by asking why 5 times. Now, the number 5 is just a guideline. It might just take 3 questions to get to the answer. It might take 7 or 8 questions, but it's just a very simplistic way to get to the root cause. And here's a very simplistic example of how it works. So the problem is the car won't start. Well, why? The battery is dead. Well, why is the battery dead? Because the alternator is not functioning. Why is the alternator not functioning? Because the belt has broken. Why is the belt why has the belt broken? Well, it's because it's beyond its useful service life and not hasn't been replaced. Why wasn't it replaced? Well, because the vehicle was not maintained according to the service schedule. So there's the fifth why is the root cause. Why is the battery dead? Because the car wasn't serviced properly. And no, this is just a very simplistic example, but if we push that to our health issues, let's just do a fun one just to see here what happens. So let's say that the doctor says you've got type 2 diabetes. Okay, hang on a second. My computer's doing a thing here.
Yeah, it reminded me of when the diagnosis would be you have type 2 diabetes. Would the answer to the why be because you're not taking any diabetes medication? I
No.
don't think that's the answer.
So, yeah, so not only can the five whys help identify the root of a medical problem, but it can save hassle, time, and money that people might spend otherwise pursuing different answers, right? Pursuing ineffective solutions. So, okay, so let's say you something comes up. Also, let me point out that you can do the five whys with your friends and family involved. That's really helpful because groupthink can lead to a lot of other ideas and thoughts about things. So, okay, let's talk about the diabetes. Why is the doctor saying this? Well, because there's too much glucose in the blood. Okay, so why is there too much glucose? Because the glucose can't get where it's intended to go, so it's staying in the bloodstream. It's intended to go into our muscle cells, but it can't get there. Why can't it get there? Because the cells have become resistant to insulin, which is the hormone that escorts glucose into our cells. So the hormone, the glucose can't get into our cells because the insulin, which escorts the glucose into the cells, can't get in there. The cells have become insulin resistant. And why have they become insulin resistant? Because they are excess fat has accumulated inside the cells, and the cells are now locked up or gummed up and compromised by fat, which interferes with the insulin's ability to open the door and let the glucose get in there. Why are my cells compromised with fat? Well, it could be fat from your bloodstream, which is built up inside the muscle cells and is blocking the pathway that would get the insulin and the glucose into the cell. But most likely, it's the consumption of a high fat standard American diet, or if we are overweight, it could be fat produced from our own fat stores, which does happen. So, when we determine that diet is the root cause of the problem, the solution often becomes clear, right? Is the solution is right in front of us to switch to a whole food plant-based diet, which will allow the body to begin the healing process, which is needed to reverse these underlying issues. But unfortunately, most healthcare providers aren't telling you any of this. They're going to treat you at the first why, right? The first why, there's too much glucose in your blood. That's when you're going to get treated, typically in mainstream media. I mean, mainstream medical care. So the five whys technique can be a real eye opener, but there is one caveat to it. And that is that the underlying condition, oops, if the underlying condition, if we determine it is food, are we going to change our food choices or are we still going to continue to choose the foods that we're accustomed to, but the foods that are making us sick? So if we choose the latter, if we choose to continue on, consuming the foods that are making us sick, then I think it's time to ask one more final why. Like, why are we doing that? Why are we willing to sacrifice our health when we don't have to do that? And figuring out that final why could be the integral part of your success. Like, why would we choose to repeat that same destructive pattern even when we know the risk of the damage that it's doing to us? And this is just a question that each of us can explore and truthfully answer within ourselves. So, sometimes we believe that getting heavier and sicker is just a natural part of aging. Or maybe we expect our doctor to fix all of our lifestyle related problems, which frees us from taking any responsibility to do that on our own. But finding the answer, again, could take some serious soul searching and honest self examination. But our success in losing weight and regaining our health might ultimately depend on understanding and addressing that final why. Like, why am I still going to choose to eat the wrong foods? So, in my book, too, I talk about the 12 barriers to change. And I think we've talked about that here on Amy's show as well. So I would like to point out, though, that there is a drawback to the 5 whys. And I guess I didn't put that in there. The 5 whys is limited. Wait, yes, I did. I know I did. Yeah. So there we talked about the latter why, like the latest why. And the drawback to the 5 whys is that it's limited to a person's knowledge base, right? If you don't have the knowledge base about how glucose gets into the cells and all of that, you're not going to be able to answer those questions or to examine the issue logically. So to get to the root cause of things, you really need to understand the process of what's going on inside your body, which is going to take some research. And I always encourage clients and friends and readers to stay engaged in continual learning when it comes to diet and health. That way you'll be able to address these questions, easier when you understand how the body functions. And the bottom line is that we all have personal responsibility when it comes to our health. And until we analyze and deal with the deeper issues behind our behavior, we're going to continue to feel frustrated and defeated, especially with weight loss. So remember that the foods you choose today are going to determine whether you live in health or in sickness later. And the good news is that no matter how far you've veered off course or what you're currently eating, you always have the option to choose a much better path. And your body is always striving to heal. We've got that going in our favor for us, right? Our body wants to heal. And it can do so when we feed it the right foods, which is the proven, well documented way of eating a whole food, plant based, no added oil diet. Not only is it, the healthiest way to eat, it's the most anti-inflammatory way to eat as well, and the only diet proven capable of reversing even advanced stages of our number one killer, heart disease. So that was big disconnect number 6, is not owning our own role in our health. Because many people don't, like they want the doctors to fix them, or they just figure this is a natural part of life, is to get to a certain age and have to get in the medical system for treatments and surgeries and drugs and all of that, when that's not necessarily the case. Any thoughts on that last one there, Amy? That was a lot to listen to and ponder.
Yes, that really was. And it just, I think that I'm having similar experiences with my clients and friends and some family members where they are thinking that it's just the sickness is an inevitable consequence of aging, and that they don't have any input into what they can do to make it better. And I've interviewed some people that have talked about how a lot of these processed foods that people are consuming are really messing with their brain chemistry, and as they're, especially people who are getting the type 2 diabetes, it's making them cognitively impaired,
Mhm.
so that they're not as sharp as they used to be, and they don't realize it. They don't feel the change because it's been gradual, and so
Mhm.
it's hard for them to advocate for themselves and understand what's going on when they're starting to become more and more cognitively impaired. So
Mhm.
cleaning up the diet can really help, and then just reading your book and looking at all the things that you have to offer, watching the interviews that I do, and people like us. If every day you were either reading a book, you could even get them from the library, if you are listening to a podcast or watching a YouTube video that has to do with this lifestyle, more and more you're going to learn, and it's going to make more and more sense to you. So, and and then when I think about that sugar, oil, and salt, and how they are adding those things to change the way that the processed foods taste, it makes me angry. And I think that people should get angry, and they should say to themselves, I'm not going to let this control me anymore, because that's what it is. It's controlling me. It's controlling my impulses, my ability to make good decisions that are good for my health. And get this stuff out of your house, and don't, and just make it that it doesn't, it's not part of what you're doing anymore. And you'll get back a lot of that mental clarity, and you'll be able to advocate better for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, I've got one more slide to show. It's just, I'd love to keep in touch with your viewers as well. There's my website and my contact information. And I have a free webinar that I'd like to just mention, if I could, on my website. It's called 3 Food Mistakes That Lead to Painful Joints, Extra Weight, and Health Problems the Doctors Aren't Solving. Since we're on the topic of that, that ties in nicely with today's topic. And that's a free webinar. Feel free to check that out. And then, oh, there's an inflammation in your diet class. Oh, I've got a coupon code there, take off 50, or you can put Be Green with Amy in there, and you will get 50% off this class called Inflammation in Your Diet. And we talk all about inflammatory foods, anti-inflammatory foods, why they're that, what you can do about it. And also there's label reading included in that class as well. And this was a class that I taught at our local college for a few years. But I don't, since COVID, I'm not doing that anymore. So the class is on my website on the courses tab, and you can get it for 50% off as a little thank you for watching today on Amy's show.
That's a
And
really
that
good
is it.
offer. Okay. Well, this was wonderful. I know that received a lot of pearls of wisdom from you today, but I do that every time you come on the show. There's always really good pearls from you, and I'm so enjoying it and so appreciative of it. So I really wanted to thank you so much, Cyd. I wanted to let everybody know that we were talking about Cyd's book, The Plan A Diet, which is a wonderful book. There's a lot to it. It's not just a plan. There has, especially if you are into scripture, it has a lot of quotes from the scriptures, and sometimes people may use that to say that we're meant to eat meat, but there's a lot of scriptures that Cyd has found that actually refute it. So it's very uplifting, and there's just a lot of different information in here. And one of the reasons why I'm so excited about it is that Cyd has offered to donate a copy of this book for our book giveaway. So I'm going to put a link in the comments for everybody that you can go to find this book giveaway and enter for a chance to win. And Cyd will send it to you, whoever that lucky winner is. And it's so generous of you, Cyd. I really appreciate that. It's a wonderful book.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah. So everyone, please click like to show your appreciation for what Cyd shared with us today. And Cyd, tell us more about what you do and how we can find you on social media.
Yeah, so my website is cydnotter.com. That's the hub, where you'll find everything, links to courses. Sign up for my weekly mailer. It comes out on Wednesday mornings. And inside the weekly mailer, I have an article of the week, a recipe of the week, encouraging words of the week, and a joke of the week. So that's kind of a fun thing. On Wednesdays, I do that. I host an inflammation support group at pbnsg.org, which is Plant-Based Nutrition Support Group. I'm working on some courses right now, which I'll be releasing soon. So if you get on my mailer, you'll be kept apprised of those. Oh, and right now I'm in the Food for Life instructor training with Dr. Barnard. I'm halfway through my training at this point to become a licensed Food for Life instructor. So mid-November, I'll be graduating from that. And I'm going to have a December holiday night for my first class. It's going to be my trial run just to get my feet wet with offering a class for Dr. Barnard's Food for Life program. So if you are interested in that, let me know, and I'll make sure you get notified of that. I'm going to invite my private Facebook group first. So if you are interested in coming to that free class, get into my private Facebook group, which is the Plan A Diet on Facebook.
Well, congratulations. That's wonderful news. That is so exciting. Wow. I'm really
Yeah.
impressed. That's what I'm looking forward to seeing more about that. Yeah. So I think that we might have had a question. So let me just see if I think we had a question that came up, so because I didn't want to miss out on that. Let's see. Well, somebody had asked if someone was destined to. I lost the question, but someone was destined to have hypertension for the rest of. Oh, here it is. Yeah, here's from Mona. Is one destined to take lifetime medication for essential hypertension? I know that's kind of a medical question, so
It
we're not
is,
here to
yeah,
give medical advice, but maybe if
right.
you want to give your opinion.
I'm hesitant to do that. I'd have to know more about the person's background. And like you said, Amy, we cannot give precise medical advice here, but I don't believe that anyone that would follow a whole food plant-based diet, if they would give their body the best chance to heal, would be the place to start, right? This could differ from person to person even. So by eating a whole food plant-based, no added oil diet, keep the fat low. That's important. You're going to give your body the best chance to achieve the best that it can achieve. So that would be my advice for that.
Yeah,
drmcdougall.com would be another place to search that information out because he has a lot of things on hypertension there, or even nutritionfacts.org. Type in essential hypertension to Dr. Greger's website, nutritionfacts.org, and he might have better information than I could provide here in this little short snippet of time.
yeah.
How about you, Amy?
Yeah, I agree, and that's why I had said we're not physicians, so we can't give out medical advice. But I often find that there are people that are on, and I'm not saying this about you, Mona, but I'm talking when I'm answering this, I'm not just answering Mona's question. I'm answering for anybody else that might be having the same question in their mind. That for some people, they say that they were on a whole food plant-based diet, but they're still having those little bitty, and we talked about that in your presentation, just those little bitty get off the, plan, and just I'm just having a little of this, everything in moderation. And if somebody really wanted to get off medication, it and you just really have to do a 100% thing. And then of course, if you are doing that, then you would definitely want to be monitoring your blood pressure and working with your doctor, because it could be that it might reduce that medication, but you'd want the doctor to work with you so that you wouldn't be over medicated if that was the case. So I'm
Mhm.
not sure if that's the case for Mona, but maybe somebody else that's listening. So that's what I would think about that. Yeah.
Yeah, you bring up a good point there, Amy. You have to go all in. Even Dr. Esselstyn has talked about even the smallest amounts of moderation can throw the whole system out of whack. It's like having a lock with 4 numbers on it and you're only going to dial in 3. The lock's not going to open, right? You have to have all 4 numbers correct. You have to go all in, and it seems very strict, but actually it's freedom. It gives your body the best chance to heal, and it's mentally freeing as well when you know you're not going to eat those foods that are off plan. In fact, Dr. Esselstyn has a whole chapter called Moderation Kills in his book Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease. So got to go all in and at least give it a chance. Go all in for what, 2 weeks maybe, would you say, Amy, at least? Or
Well, depending on what your
yeah,
illness is, it may take longer, but you'll
yeah,
definitely notice quite a difference in the 2 weeks. But for some
yeah.
people, I mean, especially if you've been eating in the SAD diet, the Standard American diet, for a lifetime,
Hmm.
2 weeks are going to show a difference, but it may take a little longer to
Right.
completely, see big changes, that down
Right.
the line.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I should
yeah,
have clarified 2 weeks to see some type of improvement, but yeah, but then stick with it. Never just do it for just 2 weeks.
exactly. And we should tell everybody that this lifestyle, this diet is so effective that you could become dangerously over medicated. And that if
Mm.
you're on diabetes medication or medication for hypertension and maybe other kinds of medications as well, you need to work with your doctor, because wow, you could become over medicated very quickly. Yeah.
Very easily. Yeah, I had one of my clients, he passed out and hit the floor because he started eating whole food plant-based and his medication was never reduced, and he passed out from his hypertension medicine.
Yeah, and I was thinking about one of my clients who said, "I'm really being very good about this diet and I'm sticking to it, but I just have no energy, you know. And then I looked through
Mhm.
her records and I said, "Have you been working with your doctor with your hypertensive medication?" Because, and then she said, "Oh yes, I really need to do that. I forgot about that." So, and that was what it was. She was just feeling tired. Fortunately, she didn't pass out, but that
Mhm.
could have easily happened. Yeah. Oh, I had so much fun with you, Sid, and I always do, and I always learn so much from you. And I'm just so appreciative of everything that you bring to our Green Warriors every time that you're on.
Thanks so much, Amy. I love being here too. It's just a pleasure to chat with you and to reinforce what we know is the truth about food and to help people too on their journeys, however we can help.
So, Sid, what's your final take-home message for our Green Warriors?
Connect the dots. Don't, think about the big disconnects we talked about because life is too short to spend the last 5, 10, or 20 years dealing with preventable health issues that suck up so much of your time, your energy, your calendar appointments, all of that. Let's do away with that and live a life of freedom.
Beautifully said. Green Warriors, tell us in the comments, what are you going to remember about today's presentation? One of my takeaways is the 5 whys. I love that. I'm going to apply that to a lot of things in my life. And I wanted to thank the Green Warriors, because if you weren't here, we wouldn't be here. We're here to bring you a lot of information, and hopefully it's helpful, and hopefully you're spreading the news and sharing these broadcasts with your friends and loved ones. And I also wanted to thank Just Task Voice, because she did the countdown and the promos, and she's been so helpful in helping us promote this broadcast. And Just Task Voice, tell us who's coming up next.
Have you ever considered going raw on a plant-based diet? Learn the benefits and tips from Esther Leverage, who at age 72 lost 130 pounds. Join us on Friday, October 27th, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific, on Be Green with Amy Live.
So thank you, Green Warriors. A special thank you to you. I'm offering you 5 free recipes. So you just go to my website, begreenwithamy.com/join, and I will send you 5 free recipes with some motivational types of quotes and maybe some pictures of me doing some interesting things. And I wanted to also ask for you guys, all of you Green Warriors, instead, take your right hand and grab your left shoulder, and take your left hand and grab your right shoulder. Now squeeze, because that's a hug from me to you. And if you would like to join me and Sid as we sign off, you can type in the comments below what my tagline is. Are you ready, Sid?
Yep.
Okay. Well, until I see all of you again, remember, be strong, be well, and be green.
Green.
Thank you so much, Sid. Thanks, Green Warriors.
Now you can listen to Be Green with Amy expert interviews wherever you go. Listen while walking, meal prepping, or traveling. Find Be Green with Amy on Apple, Google, Alexa, Amazon, or virtually anywhere you find podcasts. Be